Hi friends, this is your pal Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Echohawk's absolutely brilliant analytical data on Dungeons and Dragons by edition, right? And today we're going to talk about first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And let's look at the numbers. So I'm going to round these numbers off to the nearest tens and the nearest hundreds. But this edition had 150 distinct products. Those products had 7,400 pages of new content. Okay, and if you wanted to buy every single one of those 150 products, you would pay $1,100. The time period for this went from 1977 to 1999. Okay, and so let's talk about why. So why did first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons exist? All these weird early editions of Dungeons and Dragons all did not exist for any real game reason. They existed for any real need from anyone in the community. They all existed based on like conflicts between the creators, right? So Gary Gygax came out, he really delivered Dungeons and Dragons, but there was this vestigial nub named Dave Arneson who had done virtually nothing but was connected to the game. And so Gary's like, well, let's do Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and we'll give an attempt to kind of chop that nub off. And it did not work. Dave Arneson's name is still on the game to this day, right? So, but that was the only reason first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons even like came forward. The thing to understand about first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons is this was Gary's original Dungeons and Dragons was Gary Gygax's Dungeons and Dragons 100%. Not even 100%, but like it was from his energy. Not it was from his active live energy, not from his legacy, right? And the same thing with, but actually even first edition was really, first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was not even Gary Gygax's real active energy. He was out by 1986, and they were still doing first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons products in 1999. So for 13 years, this ran on other people's energy, right? And on Gary's legacy, right? And Gary had a legacy even before he was dead, right? Like, remember when Gary used to work on D&D? It's 1999. D&D is bigger than ever, but Gary ain't here, right? Like, so like it's a strange thing. What's really wild is Gary's legacy. I think Gary is accomplishing far more dead than he ever did alive, right? And I think that's kind of a model for life. Can you live the type of life where you are accomplishing your legacy than you did literally with your life's energy, which that's pretty incredible. But I think that really accurately describes Gary Gygax. I think he does more today in 2025 than he did on any day he was alive, right? Which is incredible. We have another guy in American politics who just went from being kind of a marginal success to an absolute legacy. He's accomplishing more in death than he ever did alive. Probably accomplished more in the last month than he did during the entirety of his entire life. It's just unbelievable. This idea about death legacy is a very big deal. All right, but the other thing that I wanted to talk about with first edition Dungeons and Dragons, is its numbers were virtually identical. Product, page count, cost, almost identical, within 10 to 20% on every single number with basic Dungeons and Dragons, right? Which, and so I think it's worth noting that how close they were together. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.